Okay, we're going to call this meeting to order, it being it's 2:01. I'd like to acknowledge that we are on Treaty 6 land and home of the Dakota and the Métis. Approval of the agenda.
So moved. The
Mayor
agenda
Dion.
of this meeting be approved. Presentations and delegations, speakers listed on the agenda be heard when called forward by the chair.
And thank you for reading that. Just a reminder, we're an executive, so you don't have to read the entire motion, but thank you for that. Okay, we're going to go to the vote. I know, I pushed it about 5 times. There we go. Okay, that vote's open. And do we have Tara? She's not here, okay. And that's carried. Declaration of conflict of interest, we all know what that's about. Adoption of the minutes. I pushed the wrong button. Okay, Councillor Miller,
So moved, Mr. Chair.
thank you very much. And that's open for voting. Okay, and that's carried. Delegations, 5.1, updated paratransit statistics and strategic plan verbal presentation from Bill Poloniski, Chief Executive Officer, Community Services Center. Welcome. There we go. Oh, yeah. Yep. Yeah, the floor is open to you.
Thank you, Chair Edwards, Mayor Dion, councillors. As of course you introduced me as the representative to speak towards the paratransit priorities for this year. First, I want to say I want to make this personal. By that I mean that when I see one of my buses, I call them my buses, going down the street, I feel an immense source of pride and an immediate sense of gratitude, because without council's support, we would not have been providing evening service, we would not have been providing weekend service, and we would not have been able to implement a split shift and reduce our waiting list. So what I have presented in the speaking notes are the original strategic priorities for this year, and I just want to bring you up to date on where we're at with the 5 priorities. 6 priorities, sorry. One of the things that we need to do, and I haven't solicited the input of council yet, but as we're approaching budget time, I know that there'll be some debate about whether or not we want to have service on special stat holidays such as Christmas Day and Canada Day. We haven't actioned that yet, but number 2, my team leader has researched dispatch costs and programs from all over Canada. We had indicated that the funding for the initiative would have come from transportation reserves. This year, however, we allocated reserves to operating budget and to cover deficit and transportation costs, particularly fuel costs last year. Eliminate turnaways and unfulfilled trips. I'm pleased to announce that with the 25 people waiting for service, we have been able to accommodate 17 of them. And if I remember correctly, it was Councillor Kilmer who made the motion for the funds for the split shift, which again enabled us to do that. So that's quite an achievement. We did hold public consultations, and with the flurry of activity, you know, they say that summertime is going to slow down. It never seems to do that. So the report is underway. It just has not been completed yet. And one of the most important things that we did was in February, we appointed a team leader and we joined Mission Zero. And that has caused us to take a look very carefully at passenger and driver safety, and we've implemented about 6 new features to enhance safety for our passengers and drivers. We've attended regional meetings, or at least he has, and we have provided training for our drivers in using the Q restraint system and first aid and CPR. And we're working with Jeff's crew to come up with a multi-year agreement. And I'm glad to say that that has been coming along quite nicely, and appreciate the effort of Mohammed and Evan. So thank you very much. I'm going to mention that I'm now walking and I'm driving, so the city will be pleased to hear that I'm supporting the finances through the parking meter program. So anyway.
Perfect.
Yeah, there you go. So that's the narrative. Now the statistics that are presented. Last year, we at this time had 17,494 trips. This year we have 20,888. So you can see that as we've rebounded from COVID, our numbers are increasing. One of the things that we've done is we've actively sought the participation of the care homes and the long-term care facilities to renew their group outings. So that's going to boost our numbers. I'm sure we're headed to a 40,000 a year, which will be a record. You can see that the refusals are down significantly from last year. If you look in the far right-hand column, last year refusals year-to-date were 104. We're now at 56. If you take a look at rides per hour, last year we were at 2.79 rides per hour. This year we're at 3.16 average, and last month we were at 3.24. So that's a benchmark that's used across Canada, and we're sort of middle of the pack. For us, 3.24 is a good number, but like Telemiracle, we're going higher. We don't have any school charters. That's affected us in a way with our numbers and our revenue, but our seniors program is going strong. So that's my verbal report.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Do we have questions for our guest? Seeing none, thank you very much. We're going to go to discussions on the motion. We have a motion on the table. Do we have a mover? Yes, we do. Mayor
Also
Dion.
move. Also move whatever on the screen.
Thank you so much. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, we'll go to the vote. Okay, that is open. And it carries unanimously. Okay, welcome back.
Thank
Item
you,
5.2, para bus tender.
Chair Edwards. Thank you very much. We were really excited to see last week's agenda item dealing with the motion that a new bus be ordered for the service. Since we've implemented the split shift, we're down to 1 spare bus. We have 5 buses in service. There's been about 3 times in the last year when we've had our one spare bus in the garage for repairs and something else has gone down, either a lift has failed in one of the buses, or it has to go in for service, where we lost an exhaust pipe, or we got stuck in the winter time and we had to shift routes. If we don't have the spare bus, the extra spare bus, we're really putting ourselves at risk. We are proposing, and we're entreating you to have a second look at whether or not the one bus that's slated for retirement actually gets retired. What we would like to see is that bus be maintained in service as a yard bus, only to be used when all of our 6 buses are either in service or otherwise we have 2 buses tied up. So that was the purpose behind setting these speakers' notes ahead. Our principles at play are effective and efficient and responsive services. So the last thing we want to do is have to cut back services that puts people with dialysis at risk. It puts the group programs like Kin Enterprises and whatnot at risk. We just simply hope that we can keep the one bus that's going to be retired. I know that it's safety till December, and it'll have to go for safety again. The buses have been repaired. The frames have been repaired over the years, and we feel that until it's determined what the cost of safetying that extra bus is, that we should consider keeping it in service. That's all.
Okay, thank you very much. Questions for our guest? Councillor Head.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. And thank you, Mr. Polonsky, for the presentation. It's great to hear that our services are being utilized, and we're doing the best we can with the services and buses that we have. So saying that, I do feel that keeping this as a spare bus is important. So I don't have any questions for you per se, but I do want to make a motion if there's any questions for the speaker. I'd like to make a motion that the community services maintain the bus for their use and in operation. So I don't know how we want to phrase that motion, but I would like to, the referral to Public Works may be a denial. I'd like to have it clear in this room that we want this to the community service to ensure that they have that extra bus for their services. So I'd like to make that motion to reflect that.
Okay, thank you for that motion. We'll go to Mayor Dion.
I won't be supporting the motion, strictly because I would sooner work with the community services to see if we could buy a new bus. The reason I want it to go to Public Works, does the frame have to be rebuilt again? They're going to have a very tough budget in '24. And I don't want to give them a bus that they're going to have to repair, because then they're going to ask us for the money. One of the reasons, if I remember this bus, 2014? It's 2014. Remember when the fleet manager explained it? That we were catching up and we got behind, and this is one that way has to be replaced. And so I'm not prepared to keep the bus, strictly because if it's going to cost $20,000 a year to keep it on the road, I'd sooner put that to a new bus. So I do support the original motion to send it to Public Works, and they weren't going to deny it. They were going to respond to our questions, and one of my questions are, when the fleet manager was here, he said this was the worst bus, and it had to pass inspection. So it hasn't even passed inspection yet, and I'm worried when it comes to inspection, Bill has it, and he gets it inspected, and it needs $20,000, $30,000 worth of repairs. I'm not prepared to give him that $30,000. I don't believe you put old money into an old bus. If you're going to have to put money in, like 20 grand or whatever, that's why I was waiting for the report, I'd sooner put that in the new and then go back to the government, and they may have some money left over in that fund, and they may support giving us another bus, because I'd sooner go with the argument to the province that we need another good bus to keep our services and keep the counts down. I'm afraid we're going to pull this bus out and it's going to break down just like the other one, and that's why I supported it going to Public Works, because I actually was going to move that we get a report and actually talk to the government first to see if we get a new bus. And I'd sooner subsidize a new bus than subsidize a 2014 bus. So I can't support the recommendation, because we don't even know the condition of this bus. We don't know if it's going to pass inspection. and we approve it and doesn't pass inspection, then I believe we're obligated to get them another bus. So I'd sooner have it go to Public Works, get a report, see if we can get a new bus. I support getting a new bus because I want the service to be reliable. But when you're driving a 2014 as a backup, that's not a good spare or reliable. So I can't support the motion.
Okay, so prior to debating the motion, we have our guest at the podium. Do we have questions for Bill? Counselor Kilmer?
No, I don't. Sorry.
Okay, so there's no questions for our speaker, and I will. Okay, okay, good, thank you. Mayor Dion?
So you heard my comments. I'm worried about the repairs, okay, because it is a 2014. And I believe we've repaired this frame on this one. I'm trying to remember our thing, and so maybe you could help me, Bill. Have we repaired the frame on this twice now or just once?
I think it's twice, Mayor Dion.
Yeah. Okay. So you understand where I'm coming from? I support you, but I want to get you something better than a 2014 because I don't think it's going to pass inspection again without us fixing it some more.
Right.
And I'd sooner put money into it. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Counselor Head?
Thank you. In your expertise, I realize you're not our fleet manager here, but is the bus working? I mean, it's fixed twice. It shouldn't break down a third time for the frame. I mean, your thoughts on this bus condition? You're asking for us to keep it, so there must be some value to it. And I guess the question to the Public Works Director is one. Second one, what are we going to do with this bus if the community service doesn't get it? So two questions, one for Mr. Polonsky and for our director.
Well, there is a new bus in order, I understand, that'll replace this one, but it still leaves us with one bus. We've looked at the microbus approach, which would be a nice solution, but they're very expensive, almost as expensive as a full cutaway. To answer the question, what would happen to this bus if we kept it? That was the question?
Yes.
We would simply use it as a backup to the backup. So it would be primarily parked until it was absolutely needed. We wouldn't be putting it into full service, but it would go in when we had charters and the other spare bus had to go out. This time of the year, we're very busy with charters. It may cost $20,000 to repair it, but that's significantly less than a cost for a new bus. But I would be very, very excited if we could find a way to get a second bus.
Absolutely. I am in support of a new bus. However, we're not talking about that today. We're talking about what we do with our current fleet. I don't want our services to be withdrawn or are limited. And you know, as it is, we can't meet the demands already. So I am supportive of this motion until in the meantime we get a new bus.
Counselor Solomon?
Thank you. And thank you, Mr. Pawlowski, for your presentation. I certainly understand the merit of having the extra bus, and I think it's important that happen. I guess my question more has to do with my concern. I do understand keeping an old bus on the road can be costly. Is this the oldest bus in the fleet? Or are there some others that are there? I'm just trying to see the big picture of whether this is the one we want to keep, or should we be pursuing the new one and then keeping one of the other ones that we might potentially have in the fleet already. So
There's twins, both of them born in 2014. So we had two buses arrive in the same year before I started, so they're getting fairly old. If I remember correctly, this bus had a new motor put in, and that in itself should keep it in service for a little while longer.
And over the last 5 years, if it's a 14, it's obviously going to almost be 10 years old. Has the costs increased every year for maintaining this particular unit, or is that not the information you have at this time?
Costs have ranged between $52,000 a year to $59,000 a year for repairs and maintenance for the fleet. What's typically budgeted is $117,500, at least for the last 2 years.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, any further questions for our guest? Seeing none, thank you very much, and we're just going to move on to discuss the motion.
Thank you.
Counselor Kilmer?
Thank you very much. My thought for the mover and in discussion is that we actually ask Public Works for a report during budget time, like for the budget time. I do think that we need more information for sure before we lead one way or the other. I do hear the importance of having a secondary backup to the backup. That is extremely critical to our residents who do use the service. And we want to provide the safest and as well as most economic way of doing it. So rather than saying I'm not in favor of forcing the issue, I would like a report from our fleet manager.
Mayor Dion.
Yeah, and I think that's important because I want to ask the fleet manager, because I actually thought it was the other 14 that got the new motor. So that's why I'd like to have the fleet manager here to see. We don't even know, we're telling them to keep this 14, and the fleet manager said it's the worst and it's got to go because he doesn't think it's going to pass inspection. So that's why I support going to Public Works, because I don't want to give them something and then they come back to us and say, we got to increase our budget 40,000 to keep this bus going. And the other reason is, and Bill sat down, but there's no rush for this bus because it's a backup for the backup, and it's not even going to be available. The new bus isn't even coming, I don't think, for another 8 months? For another 8 months. So it's not like we need it today. This bus is still going to be in service for another 8 months. So we've got lots of time to research it. So that's why I don't think it's an emergency that we pass this motion.
Councillor Ogrodnik.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Yes, I agree that we need to wait on this motion. This motion would be best served after we get more information on its state of use. And I just want to commend the Community Service Center for their work. About 6 years ago, I think it was, when we expanded the service to the evenings and weekends, and we could have done it a lot cheaper by using taxi cabs and subsidizing that, et cetera. But we decided as a council that it's important that that the residents that use these buses deserve to be treated with dignity and respect, and also have the right to live in our society and in our community, and be able to go to hockey games, the theater, to the bar, or whatever in the evening, just like everybody else. Just because they're limited with their mobility does not mean that they shouldn't have that access. So it's a great service. We have a backup bus already for that. Hopefully that is sufficient right now to get us until we get this new bus. And then once we get the new bus, decide what to do with the 2014 bus. So I think the original motion should move forward. And then Councillor Head, this motion would be great after we get the report on whether this old bus could be a backup to a backup or not. So, because I definitely don't want to see people left without this service in the evenings and on weekends. It gives dignity to their life in Prince Albert, and that's what we need to do, make sure that we fund the people that use this service. So thank you.
Okay. Any further discussion? We still have a motion that we're going to vote on. I'll open the vote now. That's going to be the right one? Yeah. You've changed that? Okay. Okay, that vote is open. Motion's denied, 7-1. Mayor Dion.
I'll move the original motion that
Thank
goes
you.
to Public Works.
Discussion? Counselor Kilmer.
I am wondering if we can get the mover to also add and report back, provide a report to
At budget.
council.
At budget?
Yeah,
Or
budget.
just,
Oh. Thank you.
you're agreeable? Yes. Perfect. Any further discussion? Seeing none? Yeah, it's coming up right now. And it's already.
See the motion on the screen?
There we go. And we're open. So now what do I do? Abort?
That the correspondence be received and referred to Public Works for review and report. Public Works. For review and report. To budget it. Well,
For review and report. I don't know. It's open, so. And that motion's carried. Okay, consent agenda. Mayor Dion,
Oh, I had my lights still on.
you did.
If no one has nothing to remove, I'll move the consent agenda.
Should we give an opportunity to, yeah, let's give an opportunity on the consent agenda. Seeing none, we have a motion from Mayor Dion to move the balance. I was going to do that. I was scrolling down. Right there.
oh, it's really close.
And that is open. Motion's carried. Reports of administration and committees. Item 7.1, Wendell Witter Field naming, verbal presentation, Jody Boulay, Director of Community Services. Go ahead, Director.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of council, for the opportunity to present the recommendations this afternoon. Before I start, I wanted to just recognize that we have Anna Rybka and Taras Kachowski with the Prince Albert Minor Football Association, and also would like to thank them for their work and commitment with the association over the past number of years. This specific proposal is for the naming of Wendell Witter Field, and it's my pleasure to bring the recommendations forward. This was something that did come to members of council a little over a year ago. However, we did have quite an extensive naming process within our various parks that we're recognizing veterans and other very notable individuals within our community. We felt it was necessary to see that process forward and to approval before then working within those park spaces for amenities or fields such as this location. Wendell was also recognized through the Prince Albert Sports Hall of Fame in 2022 and inducted, and was also a very notable evening and opportunity for the family to have those contributions recognized in a formal way. We feel that this is another notable step in recognizing Wendell's contributions, not just to Prince Albert minor football, but also to the sporting community. By naming the field at Thomas Settee Park after Wendell, we feel that it is another way, another method of having that formal recognition, very prominent and present in the community. The Football Association does more so exclusively utilize this location for their practices and their programming and development in the sport of football. And we felt it was very fitting that this was a location that they had brought forward as a request to further recognize Wendell. The intent behind the term is a 10-year term, and we felt it was necessary at this point to be consistent with our naming rights and sponsorship policy as a new request. With that, though, we also see this term as an opportunity to revisit at the end of August 31st, 2032, with the Prince Albert Minor Football Association to see if there's opportunity at that time to extend the naming rights opportunity, or to just simply revisit that and make sure the agreement remains current and suitable to the needs as per their request. So unless there's any other questions from members of council, that's our recommendations this evening, is to approve the field at Thomas Settee Park, Wendell Whitterfield.
There we go. Councillor Ogrodnik.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I'll move the recommendation, and I thank the Director for his report and words about Mr. Witter. I think, too, it's a great idea to add to the Thomas Settee Park. You know, as we know, we just opened that park, and we're adding in that area of Crescent Heights, which is just down the street from where I live, and it's in my ward. And I'm very proud that Prince Albert Minor Football does all of their training and out of that particular area of Crescent Heights, uses Crescent Heights Rink, and this is so appropriate. And so thank you to the Minor Football Association for bringing this forward, and I support this 100% and will so also at council. So I move the motion. I'd like to read it, but I will move the motion.
Thanks, Councillor. You can get that opportunity in the council meeting. Councillor Solomon.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, and also thank you to the Director for the report and to the River Rider delegation that's here today. I have first-hand experience with the River Riders program, and I know it's fantastic, not only for the community in terms of teaching football skills, but also in developing the character of young men and young ladies over the years. So it's a great program, and in my experience with it, Wendell was instrumental in the success of it. I know he's probably still deeply missed, and I will be supporting this motion.
Okay, any further discussion? We do have your name on there, absolutely. No worries. Okay, we're going to open the vote. And that vote is open. And it's carried unanimously. Okay, item 7.2, Margot Fournier Facility Naming Verbal Presentation from our Director of Community Services. Go ahead, Director.
Thank you again, Mr. Chairman. Also very pleased to present these recommendations this afternoon for consideration by members of council. We do have members of the Fournier family. We have Megan, Jason, and Daniel present, also some other members of the family here. Jackie, yes. And and certainly want to thank Mr. Holash as well in his personal capacity and relationship with the family, and really was of great assistance in making sure that they stayed informed through the process before it made it to council chambers. So the recommendation today is to recognize Margot Fournier through the facility naming of the Prince Albert Arts Centre located at 1010 Central Avenue. In the report, we did identify many notable contributions by Margot Fournier to the community of Prince Albert and beyond. These are significant contributions that continue to deserve formal recognition in our community. And with the Art Center in mind, we did feel it was a very suitable location in review of Margot's history and background and the contributions that she had contributed to not just Prince Albert, but also beyond. With that in mind, you will note, contrary to the past recommendation with Wendell Whitterfield, this particular location, we aren't recommending a term. And the reason behind that, we are looking for an exception to the policy because of the fact that there wasn't a formal term in place with the previous Margot Fournier Centre. Because of that sale of the building, we did feel it was notable to uphold the fact that this should be a long-term naming requirement, and certainly Margot's name and history and the family's name certainly deserving of such recognition. So unless there's other questions of members of council, we present those recommendations this afternoon.
Thanks for the presentation, Director. We have Councillor Ogrodnik.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I'll move this motion, and I'm very, very happy that we keep alive the name Margot Fournier in our community. That's one thing that I mentioned when we were selling the Margot Fournier Centre to PAGC, that we need to make sure that we find a facility, appropriate facility to name after Margot Fournier. We have so many beautiful people in our community, past and present, and she's one of the ones from the past that gave so much, not only to our community, but to our country. And if you think about her accomplishments during World War II, entertaining soldiers and keeping morale high and up. And in those first few years, I mean, we were, the Allies were getting slaughtered by the Nazis, and we were losing. And it was through morale and through keeping up the good work that she and other entertainers did to our troops that really helped turn the tide. And so it's an accomplishment there. And for all of her work, she was invested in the Order of Canada in 1983. And to also have a National Historic Site now named in her honor, I think says that we remember, we respect, and we need to make sure that the community knows who Margot Fournier is. I know our solicitor does. He's a result of her hard work in the Prince Albert Boys Choir. And I don't mean to embarrass you, but I mean, there's many people that will talk positively about her and the work that she did in our community. And not only in the arts, but also in athletics, in swimming and diving. They were instrumental in doing that as well. And I could remember as a kid, watching the practices. I lived in Midtown. We'd walk down to the memorial pool and watch the diving. And I can't remember, one of her sons was crazy how he would, all the moves he would do. And that's what she taught. And it's a remarkable family, remarkable memory, and appropriate that we name the Margot Fournier Arts Centre. So very, very happy. So thank you for bringing that forward. Proud to move this, and I will be proud to move it and talk again at council.
Mayor Dion.
Beat that. I can beat that. Why I support it is because of the Fournier family. It just didn't stop with Margot. They've continued, I've been to many events where they volunteer, they're part of our community, they have great voices, they sing everywhere, they're musicians. So someone that new to the community in 1988, I soon learned who the Fournier family was. I never had the blessing to see Margot, but, you know, I give her credit because she raised a beautiful family that she taught them about community volunteerism, how that is important, giving back to your community, and they continue to do that today. So out of respect of her and their family, I'm 100% in supporting this motion because they continue to be a vital part of our community.
Very good. Okay, thank you. We have a motion, and we'll go to the vote. And that vote is open. And it carries unanimously. Thank you very much. Okay, we have item 7.3, 2022 financial implications, 2022 year-end financial reporting, verbal presentation, Brianne Vance, Senior Accounting Manager.
There we go.
Yeah. Welcome, Brianne.
So thank you, everyone, for the opportunity to speak today regarding the financial status of the city for 2022. As approved at the July 10th council meeting, the auditors have signed off on the 2022 financial statements and issued a clean audit opinion. This has always been the case for the city, but it's always worth commending as not only do they assess our financial statements for a risk of material misstatement, they also review the city to ensure that the city remains in financial terms a going concern. This term simply means that we do not have any financial situations that would cause us to become unable to pay our debts. So this is important to remember considering what I'm going to speak to next. So as you would have seen in the audited financial statements, the city produced an accounting surplus of over $17 million. However, the important term there is accounting surplus. The city is required to follow public sector accounting standards for our financial reporting. However, when we budget for items that are required to be funded from that accounting surplus, but are not reflected within that calculation. In the report, you will see a breakdown as to how we take that $17 million surplus and then have to account for the capital revenue that's already spent on capital projects, the transfers to reserves that are not reflected in the surplus, the debt repayments that need to be funded by the surplus, and so on. Once you account those items that we budget for, the city actually produced an overall deficit of about $3.4 million. In the past, the detailed comparison to budget has not been provided as the audited financial statements were deemed to be sufficient. However, financial information and financial statements can be fairly difficult to read and understand, and it's our responsibility to make sure that we can present that information in an easy to understand manner. In this case, a comparison to the budget is what makes sense, as that is what council approves for spending, and that is how we determine what we require from residents in terms of taxation. The report contains a detailed breakdown as to what caused the overages, one of the main items being approved spending out of fiscal stabilization. As you can see, a lot of the items required funding as they were items that were out of the city's control, such as the assessment appeals and the snow clearing costs. However, there are other areas that were approved that may not have been considered if council and administration had timely financial reporting, which again has historically not been provided at a detailed enough level to make thoughtful decisions. When you look at Schedule 8 of the financial statements, you can see the accounting values of the different fiscal stabilization and improvement funds across the city, which amounts to about $14 million. Again, that's an accounting number. It's as at a point in time, so contains timing difference items for items such as capital spending and debt financing received. Fiscal stabilization is intended to absorb these deficiencies and accumulate surpluses. However, when items are approved to be funded out of fiscal, or when we budget in such a lean way that contains no room for emergencies, the city could find themselves in a situation where deficits are continued to be run and a financial strain is put on the city. Administration has already implemented steps to mitigate the risk of continued deficits, including the improved 2023 budgeting process. The results from the 2023 quarter 1 and quarter 2 are a reflection of the improvements being made, as the city is currently showing a surplus. We have also changed our account structure to allow for easier and more meaningful reporting. There's also a new budgeting software that we are currently training staff on. It's a lot more robust than our previous software that was built just to serve a very basic function. The new software, similar to Chart of Accounts, is a lot of work to build and configure, but once that's all done, we should be able to get more information more quickly so we can report on a timely manner and have additional time to spend strategizing on current spending. So even though we're only in August, we are currently working on the 2024 budget already. Once we begin the budget discussions in the fall, it will be important to remember what is reflected in this report to understand the ramifications of lean budgeting. When an item is cut or unaccounted for, or if it turns into an emergency situation, the funds for that item still need to be spent, even though we don't generate revenue for it. This can also impact levels of service. So since departments will have access to timely financial reporting, they will be able to see if they are going over budget in an area, and if that area corresponds to a level of service, they will be faced with the decision of going either over budget or creating more deficits to the city. Or cutting services to avoid that deficit. And with that, I can take any questions.
Thank you very much. Do we have questions for Brianne? Very good, very clear presentation. Thank you very much. Mayor Dion.
I'll move the recommendation, and I just have a comment that one thing that I did like about our presentation, we are moving to improve. We're getting better software, more accounting. I remember the day that we used to get a report at the end of the year. We never got it monthly or quarterly, so we never knew where we were. And when you don't know where you were, sometimes you can't make adjustments. So I'm happy to hear that we're running a surplus already this year, and we'll continue to be open and transparent, and I think that's what the public wants. And by making the system easier, it's easier for them to understand. So I'm pleased to move this, and thank you for your presentation.
Councillor Miller.
Thank you. I'm just going to add to Mayor Dion's comments as well. Being timely on reports is very important, not only to the city but to us as well. So we learn how to pump the brakes before we start spending money that we don't have. And when we know better, we do better. Thank you.
That was pretty good. Any other discussion? Seeing none, we're going to open the vote. And that vote's open. And it's carried. Okay, we have item 7.4, Downtown Business Incentive Verbal Presentation. Craig Gittinger, Director of Planning and Development Services. And we're going to go to have a Councillor Kilmer.
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor. At this point, before we have the presentation, I would like to make a motion to postpone item 7.4 and 7.5 in order to give PA Bid Board a chance to meet in person to review and discuss the two items.
Once the,
Can I speak to it?
yeah, you can if we want to just maybe wait until it's up. Now it's up. So yes, we'll take some conversation on this. Go ahead, Councillor Kilmer.
Thank you very much. I just want to let council know that the board works very diligently, does want the same things that council and the city are working toward. However, they don't get to meet very often in person, and I do feel that once the group, we are meeting next Monday, and given that opportunity, we're able to look at the items, discuss the items face-to-face, and then come up with the direction that that board would like to take moving forward.
Thank you. Mayor Dion?
Well, and I support the motion because I believe if the board hasn't had an opportunity, and I believe face-to-face is the only way, you know, then you can get better questions, better understanding. So I am pleased to back this motion.
Okay, any further discussion? Councillor Miller?
Yes, I think it's important also that the bid meet and maybe consider also a little bit of the downtown improvement revitalization of Central Avenue, maybe have a discussion about that as well. Because I know our city planning department did extensive review and everybody had their say on what they did and what it's supposed to look like after everybody had their say. So I think it's important as well that with these incentives that we should consider revitalization of downtown before we do any of this stuff. Thank you.
Okay. No further discussion. We'll go to the vote. I will once it comes up. My fingers aren't working. Okay, and that vote is open. And it carries unanimously. Okay, unfinished business, we have none. Councillor Kilmer. Thank you. I think, what time are we here? We'll go 15 minutes. We're going to vote on the adjournment here, and it's open. Miss got them all, and we're adjourned. Thank you very much.